What up, roomies? Some books entertain us, others warn us, and every once in a while, a story comes along that feels less than fiction, and more like what tomorrow's headlines would be. Tonight's guest, author Mike Poliwoda. Did I say that correctly?
That's perfect.
All right, because I thought I was gonna butcher it from the
You know
gate.
what?
I thought I was gonna butcher it from the gate. I'm sorry about
You did better than like 90% of the people.
that.
It's all good.
All right. Whose collection, The Survivor Machine, explores artificial intelligence, identity, political division, surveillance, isolation, and the uncomfortable question whether humanity's greatest invention could also be its greatest challenge. But tonight isn't just about a book; it's about where we're headed as a society. So, Mike, welcome to In the House, man. How you been,
Oh,
bro? What's going on?
it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Um, yeah, I just just writing books, taking care of my kids, being a hockey dad. Just living the day to day like everybody else, but trying to find the good stuff, the positive in all of it.
I feel you, man. I feel you. So let's dive into it, right? So when did writing became less of a hobby and like more of something that you had to do?
Well, I gotta say, like I always wanted to be a writer, and I always
Yeah.
loved movies. And there were periods in my life where I read a lot, periods where I didn't read a lot. And in 2022, in my 50s, I was going through a real dark time. Coming out of COVID, family, the breakup of a 15-year relationship, two great kids, um, dark
Yeah.
place. And watching what was going on in the world and going on with myself, and I just started writing, and I wrote one book of short stories, and I started a Substack page, and it felt good getting all this stuff because we all have stories in us, right? We all have
Yeah.
experiences, and all of those experiences, every single human being has experiences and stories to tell. So for me, it got me out of that dark place. So I wrote my first book, Scars, which was like a real personal kind of journey. And then I wrote this novel. I didn't even know I had it in me because I got to tell you, I'm not that disciplined. And
Yo, I know what you mean because but you know what's the craziest part about that whole thing that you think you're not as disciplined as you thought you were is that once something like motivates you, internally, you be kind of sort of become obsessed with it and you just want to get it done and put it out there.
yeah,
So you know how it goes. Like sometimes we think that we don't have it in us, but we truly do. And sometimes it just takes that one spark for us to like keep pushing forward and thriving through it, man.
absolutely, 100%. Like I think we all have that drive in us, but
Yeah,
we get beat down. We get beat down by life. We get beat
yeah,
down by circumstances. We get beat down by our finances. We get beat down by a lot of things. And
yeah,
so, but I got like it was that, and knowing that I had to be there for my kids. So I wrote these books, and then the third one, Savior Machine, the one we're gonna I guess talk about a little bit about today,
yeah,
um, was just like I'm now awake. I'm writing. I'm more aware of what's going on in the world. I'm less in my own head. I'm more sort of present with my kids, and sort of connected to my world. And I was like, holy crap, what's been going on these last few years? There's a lot of
yeah,
stuff going on in the world that's crazy.
yo,
So being a guy who loved Twilight Zone and what was it, Black Mirror and shows
yeah,
like that, I always love that stuff because it scares the hell out of you, but it makes you think, right?
yeah,
So I had some ideas, and I just started writing them down, and then Savior Machine came out, and I've got there's a story about an AI president, right?
yeah,
Young Democrats and Republicans have said they've had enough. The two-party system is failing America. So there's a story about that, and digital ID, and all of these things, like dystopian societies where there's a lot of control, and where people's rights are being taken away. Things that sort of built our society. And I was like, you know what? There were so many ideas just floating around in the news,
yeah,
floating around in the stuff I was reading. And I thought, you know what? To help me get through it, because I'm one vote, my opinion doesn't really matter in the big picture. Um, so I wrote some stories, and that's kind of how it came about. And it won an award. The book won an award, which was crazy because like I didn't know anybody read it. So
But no, I get it. I get it. Like it comes to a shock when you're like the creator and you're there like, all right, cool, I'll put this out. I got this off my chest. Now it's out there in the world. People are enjoying it, and then you get like recognition for it. It must feel amazing, though.
yeah, it was cool. I gotta say, I got really emotional because when you put out art, you know this as well as anybody. You probably know this
Yeah,
better than anybody. When you put art out there that comes from your heart,
yeah,
like it's delicate. Like you have to have a level of like strength and confidence to put it out there, and then you have to have the resilience to be able to take the haters, take the criticism, but also welcome the praise
yeah.
for people who enjoy your work. And so that's kind of what it was like. It was like I was so emotional because when I got my first good review, I was like, oh my God, it validates you as a
Everything
human being. Everything, exactly.
validates everything that you were feeling, that the milestones you wanted to achieve and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of where it went, and so I just thought, and I just kept going, and I've been on the podcast thing, promoting my newest book, which is kind of like a self
Yeah.
help book. I wrote a self help book for me,
Okay.
and it turned out helping other people, but yeah, I'd love to keep talking to you about like Savior Machine and what our world is all about.
Definitely, because with Savior Machine, at least I'm gonna be honest with you, I didn't get to fully read it, but the topics in Savior Machine is very. I don't want to compare it to George Orwell, but it's very 1984 ish,
Yeah,
where you're literally taking the topics of the day, like AI, digital ID, AI president and all that, and putting it in the faces of humans and telling you, yo, this is what could happen
yeah.
if we let this roller coaster go off the tracks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure. I just thought, because I tried, like in everything that I do, like there's no judgment. It's like observation, and the in the main story about the AI president, it's
Yeah.
about people wanting a better world. It's about people wanting a better place to live, better opportunities for everybody, and the old guard trying to maintain the power and the greed and the corruption. And so that's what the conflict is there. And so it's funny because people say, well, that's kind of what's happening now, right? And I wrote it a few years ago, and I didn't think it would, you know, but all of a sudden it's kind of resurfaced again, which is awesome because I mean, this stuff, like we are so, and it touches on this in the book. Um, like we're so divided, right? We're so
Yeah.
distracted by nonsense, you
Yeah.
know? And it's like we, everything's like a smokescreen so that we are sort of kept asleep to what's really going on. And what's really going on, sadly, is I think power and corruption it's lost its way. Like governments have lost their way, I think.
Yeah.
um, and it's no longer about the greater good. And so I try to, in the main story, I try to like talk about how to deal with, because I worked in social services
Yeah.
most of my life, so I try to give solutions to poverty, homelessness, education, healthcare, things that are important to most people.
Yeah.
And I try to, and then I lighten it by, because it's an AI president, um, everybody in America gets a notice on their phone, and they can put an avatar to make the president look like whoever they want. So
That's the
everybody
that's cool.
everybody sees a president that relates to them and their
Yeah.
lifestyle and their ideas and their politics. So it kind of, it was meant to show that um, it doesn't matter what our leaders who they are, what party they are, what their ideology is, as long as they're trying to make things better for the
Yeah.
people.
No, that's absolutely true, and you have a great point where it comes to down to the government and the way things and the way society is right now has lost its way in senses that we're no longer seeing people fighting for equality. We're not seeing people fighting for what's the better good. We're just seeing a whole bunch of people just fighting each other.
Yeah,
And that's the suck ass part about it all, because of the fact that in 2026 the needle has moved so far from 1926 that we shouldn't this shouldn't even be a problem anymore. Like things of race, you know gender identity, sexuality, religion, those are things that everybody should have respect for each other and move forward on, because that's not going to help anybody in society. Why am I going to fight about who you want to sleep with, or fight about who you want to pray to? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But yet again, the powers that be use those things to
yeah,
constantly keep us divided and keep us at bay with each other, because of the fact that that's where the money is.
absolutely. You're so right. Like you're so
Yeah,
right. It's that old divide and conquer, right?
yeah,
Um, and as long as we're divided, greed, corruption, power, that wins. You know,
yeah,
and the distance between you know elitism, wealth, and poverty continues to grow.
yeah,
And I always say when I was in the not-for-profit sector, I was always amazed that in North America, where there's so much wealth and there's so much opportunity, there should be no poverty. There should be, and I'm not talking about taking on like an extreme left view or an extreme right view. I'm talking about cleaning up some of the corruption and investing it in the social infrastructure, because the
yeah,
society needs a strong social infrastructure, but it doesn't have to abandon opportunity and capitalism, because all of those things are important,
yeah.
you know. But I think there needs to be a balance, and I just, if I was given 10 years to build a social infrastructure for Canada or the United States, I think I could solve the problem. But nobody wants to hear me talk about it.
No, I get you on that, and I completely agree with you on it too. Like, if you really think about it, right? In North America, and I'm from the U.S., so I'm gonna just focus on the United States, right?
Okay.
In the United States, we're one of the most wealthiest countries in the world. We have some of our institutions are some of the best education in the world. So, and this country is so vast that I don't understand how there is homelessness, how there is poverty, how we could allow our veterans to come home from war and let them become crackheads and do all this other do all these things that degrade them in their life. And when they look for help, the government's like, nah, we're not dealing with you, or we're not giving you the benefits that you were entitled to. So when it comes down to it, and the craziest thing is that both parties, Democrat or Republican, they both have the same goals. They're both friends with each other. It's just a facade that they put on for the population, and that's the thing that gets, I think, the majority of us is like, we all want the same thing. We all want peace, prosperity, and opportunity. That's
Yes,
that's what everybody wants. So why are we gonna go backwards and divide everybody, and dull everybody down, make everybody? I understand that corporations don't want people to be critical thinkers, don't want people to be entrepreneurs. I get it, because that's how the machine keeps turning. But at the end of the day, and this is something I've always said too, is like, they would make a lot more money if the population was healthy and educated, because people are going to now look for resources to do their own thing. Now people are going to look for resources to live longer, keep up with themselves. And on top of that, when you're an entrepreneur, you're allowed to make these connections and this network that big corporations might benefit from, dealing with smaller entities, because of the fact that they could offshoot or offsource different types of work.
absolutely. No, that's beautiful. That makes perfect sense. And that's really the tragedy, right? Because,
Yeah.
something has happened. Like, I've been, we've all watched a decline, right?
Yeah.
There was a time, when human rights seemed really important, top of mind. There was a time when education or healthcare seemed like a necessary thing.
Yeah.
But it just there was this shift, and I don't know when exactly it happened because many of us are just trying to take care of our own lives and our own family, and sometimes we miss things. And I gotta say, I missed a lot, but so there was a shift, and that shift became it's no longer about the people; it's about the individuals in power.
Yeah.
And so the lip service, the division, all the stuff that you just talked about, it just when you look at all of the government waste, and this is what I also talk about in the story, like when there's accountability, when our governments are accountable to the people, um, and and the corruption stops, and all the money that's been wasted on projects that never get off the ground, on lobbyists, on reports, on consultants, all of that money could have been allocated to anti-poverty, could have
Yeah.
been allocated to healthcare. Trillions of dollars have been spent for I'm not going to just come out and name them, but there are a bunch of projects that both in the US and in Canada that have been ongoing for years where there have been zero results and billions and trillions of dollars spent.
Yeah.
So in the book, I talk about that's the solution to fixing things. The money that's been allocated to corruption basically becomes reallocated to actually helping the people.
Yeah.
And can you imagine if a billion or $1 trillion was put into healthcare or education or
I,
poverty relief?
I'll give you one better that doesn't even require $1 billion, right?
Okay.
Regulate price regulation of pharmaceuticals. How about
Yes.
that? Because this is my thing about it, right? And I'm just picking at the medical field because I think that's one of the biggest scams in the United States ever. Because I don't see why is it that you'll charge somebody, and this is just a statistic that I found months ago, so it might be wrong now. I don't understand if I go into the ER why you're charging me $900 for a bag of saline in the United States. But if I go to France or Canada or any other country, a bag of saline is only like $40, $50, right? What? And that's the thing about it too is these pharmaceutical companies are able to give those prices because they're unregulated in this country. We're one of the very few countries that allow pharmaceuticals to advertise, and they're the ones who set their own prices. Like I get if you're developing a drug that contains like a rare herb that's only found in like I don't know one mountaintop in the Himalayas. It only grows there, and that herb is worth a couple of 100,000. I get that, but you're not gonna tell me a bag of salt water is gonna cost me $1,000.
Wow. Yeah, I don't even know where to begin on the healthcare in
Yeah,
America because what you're talking about, and you see it in the like some people call it the pharmaceutical industrial complex or
yeah,
something. And yeah, it's frightening. Like the fact that it's not regulated um, is is really scary. And a lot of sectors that are not regulated because when you have that much power and you have thus that much money and then that much influence, you see it in advertising, and you said like America's one of the only places where pharmaceuticals can advertise. You're right. Like you're right. Like these sectors should be regulated 100%. You know, I can't even imagine like $900 for a bag of saline. Like that's insane. How do people like? And I'm not American. I just quick aside. My dad was a long distance truck driver, and I spent
Mm,
many summers in my life driving up and down the east coast of the United States. And every
fire.
memory I had was beautiful. I loved every experience, every person that I met. So I'm not one of those Canadian haters. So just
Yeah.
for the record,
No,
um,
you good, man. Like I've came to understand that the notion of Americans outside of the US is not a good one. And this is coming from, I'm a first generation immigrant. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. So I'm constantly going down there. I'm constantly traveling the Caribbean. So I see what people think about us in America. Like in general, they think we're, these hoarding fat slobs that are think that we're super educated, but we're not. And then when you actually come to the US and you actually interact with the people, you're there like, oh, what they're telling us on media, what media is telling us about Americans is not true. Like, for the majority, most Americans are, happy, fun loving, want to help people out. We love our food. So yeah, we are kind of fat. But hey, I'm just saying, you're not gonna get any better barbecue than here. But besides that,
100%.
but besides that, America's the biggest experiment that human society's ever had, where everybody's here, all walks of life, all religions, everything that you want to be, you could be here. But at the end of the day, our government and the people, the powers that be, are not treating it as the treasure trove that it is.
Oh man, that's such a great point because you know what? Like my experience has always been amazing with Americans.
Yeah,
When my when I've been to Disney, I've been all over. Like, and I gotta say, like, especially in my travels with my dad in the truck, like, Americans invented hospitality. Like, the the hospitality industry in Canada pales by comparison to hospitality in America. Like the
especially in the
warm,
South.
the welcoming. Like I gotta say, like the attempts to divide, and that works on every level,
Yeah,
is insane. Like look at what like last 10 years aside, okay, look at what was built: art, culture, music, innovation, technology. Like look at what America has given to the world.
yeah,
It's incredible. Yeah, I mean, I was when I was a kid, um, I had like ADHD, and they gave me green pills, and like it was really bad. But then I discovered the drums, and the music that I gravitated to was all Southern American music, blues, R&B, and then Motown, and like all of the things that just kind of like, wow, this is from America. Jazz, like so much, and which became the foundation for like in modern music became the foundation for everything else.
yeah,
That music from the 20s, 30s, 40s that came out of America, it became the foundation for country music, for rock and roll music, for every kind of music you can imagine.
yeah.
And and I remember like always having this love and fascination for America and the culture and its contributions. So when you talk about America and the perception of America, yeah, it's crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy, but it's part of the whole divide thing.
Yeah, and there's also and the proof is in the pudding because if you go, and X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, right? X, Twitter, whatever.
Yeah.
If you go through X or Twitter, and you check out like the people that came to the U.S. for the World Cup, all of them mind blown. They're like, listen, we thought America was gonna be a shit show. We thought we were gonna get shot up. We thought X, Y, and Z. And then they're like, oh my god, the food's amazing. The people are amazing. How is the perception of these people like this? Like they want to know like why we're portrayed like we are. But I will give you the answer on that. It's all because of the fact that our government treats every other country, like they could be so bought and sold, and that's straight up the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a sad thing because yet again, America's this great big melting pot where they don't appreciate the talent that's here, the potential that's here. Because the way I see it, and I'm gonna pick on the educational system now, is I don't understand why our government would bring in other people from other countries, give them a visa, pay for their education, pay for their housing, pay for all of this when you could just fund a impoverished neighborhood and you'll probably have biochemists in there, authors, writers, creators, and not only creators, you'll probably have top military brass in development, scientists in development, but we don't get that because of the fact that they won't invest into underpoverished neighborhoods. They won't invest into colored neighborhoods. They won't invest. They won't see the value in that. When little Jimmy, and I hate to say it like this, little Jimmy from the projects, instead of being a crack, instead of cooking crack, he could be in a lab creating the cure, for cancer, the cure for diabetes. Preventing blindness. They're not giving the people the opportunity to rise to their full potential. And now in 2026, and this is going back to that whole comparison from 1926, capitalism is a great thing, but at one point capitalism has to evolve and to include the socialist um characteristics. Yeah.
I agree. I agree. You need a society needs a strong social infrastructure. You need to be able to take care of its most vulnerable, and you need to provide opportunities. Capitalism is flawed, but it affords that. And if you believe it in how it's supposed to work, is that they what do they call it, like the trickle down theory, right? Like wealth is created, and the wealth is supposed to trickle down to create opportunities, create social infrastructure, and that's your balance. So you have your strong, I guess, capitalist or right leaning ideology, and then you've got your strong social conscience and social ideology. That's the balance. Too much of one or too much of the other doesn't work.
Doesn't work
because opportunity is what allows a Jimmy to become a chemist rather than cooking crack. But if that opportunity isn't there, and this is what I find so mind-boggling, the fact that it just feels like North America. Like, I know Canada has lost its way to a certain degree, and I'm just kind of sitting back and watching the train wreck. I still have faith in America. I still have faith in North America, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it's like right now we're watching a train wreck. And how did we lose sight of what is so important? And this is in the book. I'm like, I kind of try to point out that things are weird, but there's always hope, and the power is within the individual, and the power is within the collective. But if the collective is divided, then nothing's going to change.
Yeah,
nothing's going to change.
That's 100%.
And in Savior Machine, what I've done is I created like where far left and far right factions are protesting against an AI president, and they're protesting and they're saying the same things. And at some point, it's like, wait a second, we're saying that. No, we're saying that. And even those divisions, I try to look at. And once you find a common ground, once you find common interests, and even if their common interest is to overthrow the government, whether it's far left or far right, if they have that common interest, like all of a sudden, it's no longer about the ideology, it's about the purpose, right?
That's a big fact.
And so, like, I try to touch on these things in the book because, like, I'm in the second half of life, as they say, and I've seen a lot of changes. And but I shouldn't even say that, because anyone who's been alive for the last 10, 15 years has seen a lot of changes.
Bro.
And like I worry for my kids. Like I got a couple of teenagers. I've got a daughter who's older, but she's living in Kentucky. She's living her life. Um, but I worry for my kids. Like, where are they going to be? What's going to, like, are they going to be able to afford to buy a house? Am I going to need to like sell everything and buy like 60 acres in the country and like build a fortress around it just to protect myself from the government and my inability to have free speech? Do you know what I mean?
I get you, man. And and just talking about like buying like 60 acres, I've always wanted to do that, buy like a couple hundred acres and just like start giving like little plots to like my friends and family. Like, all right, cool, let's build this community up where it's ours. We still gotta obey the law and all that shit, of course.
Of course,
But
of course.
of course, but at least it's ours and we could do what we want here. And we could kind of like have a certain level of freedom and a certain level of happiness with the people that we trust. Right.
It's so important. It's so important.
And you're absolutely correct. I worry about the future of the children too, because, and this was an example that I gave out yesterday on the pod as well, was that my goddaughter, right? I was talking to my best friend. His daughter's my goddaughter, right? She's in kindergarten. She's doing her thing, and you know how they have those days where a parent could like kind of like stay in the class to see what's going on and like have eyes to make sure everything is not make sure everything is cool, but just to like see the progression of the kids. He was like that. He went to one of those and he was just like baffled on the way they were trying to like teach reading now. Because I know with you and me, we grew up with phonics, right? Learning how to sound out each letter, and being able to like sound out the words. Now they're associating words with pictures. So instead of them teaching them phonics, they're teaching them, all right, cool, you can associate this word, for instance, butterfly, with the picture of a butterfly. Okay. Instead of teaching like phonics to her. And I'm like, so what's gonna happen when she comes across a word like metamorphosis or onomatopoeia or something that doesn't have like a visual and attachment to it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So do you think that has something to do with because they you hear that the educational system is suffering right now, and that kids are going into high school and they're not able to read. Like, do you think that has a lot to do with it?
100%. 100%, because, and this is me and my conspiratorial mind going off here. It's like it's all a conspiracy at the end of the day, right? Like, the main reason they stopped teaching, like, at least for my purposes, I think the main reason they stopped teaching cursive in school was that, so when, the people who do know cursive, like, could read cursive, when they finally, like, fade out and all that, people could not read the Constitution or the Bill of Rights or the Declaration of Independence and know their rights to it, because they wouldn't be able to understand how English is written like that.
Wow, that never occurred to me. That's pretty wild.
And that's just me and me being a conspiracy theorist.
It's all good.
And I feel that they're dumbing children down because eventually they're gonna squeeze the lemon so hard that revolution is gonna happen. Yeah, they're squeezing all the juice out of it. So they're not going to want a society that knows their rights, knows how to read, knows how to be educated, to kind of like, revolt or go up against them. So they start dumbing them down as early as possible.
Wow. That's really scary. Like, my boys are teens. So it's like, I don't think of that stuff, but my gosh. Yeah. Like, it's weird. Like, I did find it weird when they stopped teaching cursive. Like, I was, but yeah, man, it's funny because, like, if you really dig, and this book does dig, the one story Glitch, which is about a digital ID situation where the guy completely doesn't exist anymore, and he goes down all these rabbit holes to try to get his identity back. I talk about a lot of the conspiracies, but what's really scary is that whether it's the theory on cursive or whether it's a digital ID or social credit system, like wherever you're at, there is truth to all of it. Maybe not 100%, but the term conspiracy theory, and my brother told me this because he's a conspiracy theorist. Um, but he said to me that term came about. It was created by like the CIA or the FBI. And I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I didn't fact check this at all, so I just want to qualify. We're just having a conversation. But um, he told me that the term conspiracy came about when people were theorizing what happened to JFK, and
Yeah.
and anybody who had a theory was considered a conspiracy theorist because it went against the narrative. And so the whole thing with conspiracy theory is it's almost a term used to dismiss an idea. It's a theory. Theories are ideas, right? They may or may not be qualified. They may have some evidence or no evidence, but these are ideas. And by labeling something, you're kind of crushing the idea, right?
True.
And that's yeah. So man, that cursive thing. Now I'll be talking about that with my brother.
Yeah, so let him know. He'll probably put you on some game for that one. But
Absolutely.
but but when it comes down to it, it's like when you take these conspiracy theories as wild as they are, right? As wild, you got Bigfoot, aliens, Project Paperclip, everything under the sun. When you take all these things into account and you label them conspiracy theories, like you said, there's always some grain of truth there, or it's the thing that people want to know what actually happened. And because of the fact that people are not being honest and transparent about what's actually happening, therefore people come up with their own theories. And going back to another point that you said, you don't know when the shift happened. I think the shift happened in 2019, right before the pandemic started. That winter leading up to the lockdowns. I think that's when the shift started, when everybody started like buckling down, started bunkering down, getting into lockdown mode. I think that's when everything happened, honestly.
Yeah. I agree. Like that was such a hard time for people. Like
Yeah.
my son, one of my sons was having such a hard time with online schooling. He ended up failing grade 7 because he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. Um, and yeah, I mean, just speaking from my own personal experience, like the whole everything went to shit
Yeah.
uh, during that year of lockdown. But I agree because you know what? People started what's that expression? Othering people, like ratting out on people when, like, if your neighbors had people over, they'd call the police. Here in like I'm on the Quebec side of Ottawa, and
Yeah.
we had lockdowns, man. Like we not lockdowns, curfews. Sorry, so we couldn't be on the road after 9 o'clock at night. Like
Wow.
that was crazy. That was so crazy to be like at 8:57 trying to get home before
Yeah.
a cop.
Curfews. Yeah,
And
man.
and my stories are based on things like that, dystopian, um, like basically dystopian societies, like where there are lockdowns, where we are forced to comply, and that's what this whole book, like that's an ongoing theme in there. Like it's this compliance and we were all terrified, right? We didn't know what was going on. Like it took a while, you know, for us to understand what was, for me anyway, because I was more like freaked out and trying to take care of my kids. But where were you when all that was happening? Like, were you doing a podcast? Were you like,
Um, Actually, the podcast. Give you the story about the podcast in a second. For me, the pandemic was a waste of time. I would say a waste of time and a lot of regrets. I would say it is. Well, let me rephrase that. Not so many regrets, but a lot of lost opportunities, I would say, to have bettered myself and have gone ahead in life. Because of the simple fact that during the pandemic, everybody was home, right? But at the end of the day, I was an essential worker. So I had to be out there doing, working. So every day I would be outside. Cool. But there was a period of time where if you weren't working or you got laid off because of those lockdowns, you were giving the government was giving you a shitload of money. Like people were making more money being at home, sitting down, not doing shit versus going out to work. Like there was a period of time, I think a 3-month period of time, like if you were unemployed, you were guaranteed like $25,000, like for like a 3-month period of time.
Wow.
Yeah, people were raking it in. And I come to say this is that during that period of time, a lot of people just sat on their asses, not did anything, and wasted money. Wasted the money they were given, wasted the opportunity they were given, because there's one thing that doesn't happen often. You were given financial freedom, not financial freedom, but you were giving some sort of finance where the government was literally paying you to live, and then you had plenty of time. And I would say this: if I had that money and that time, I would have done a whole lot of shit instead of being out there working, risking my health. You know what I mean? That's where I was at. So I really feel that the pandemic and the lockdown was a big waste of time for me.
Well, you make a really good point, because like you're creating it's government. It's like how the government messed up the 60s, and how they created this like a reliance on the social, and they incentivized people to get on the government.
Yeah.
I forgot. I don't know. I don't remember exactly uh, the president or the program, but it was like incentivizing. It was like incentivizing not to work.
Oh, welfare.
And the welfare system in the United States, and what it did was, and what it did, if I may, prior to that 60s, where they really pushed the single motherhood, like prior to that, like families who were on welfare, they're like 70%. They were in couple relationships,
Yeah.
and once they implemented that system, they destroyed the family. And so, fast forward to COVID, what you're talking about sounds like, and if you're the conspiracy theorist, right?
Yeah.
It was about destroying the desire to build and create, and the desire to work. And so, coming out of it, they said that COVID was the largest transfer of wealth in history from poor to rich,
Yeah.
created a greater division between the wealthy and the poor. And like, I gotta say, like, because we're still talking about it, it's still crazy.
Yeah.
And I just think that my brother calls it a social experiment.
Oh, it definitely was an experiment.
It calls it a social, yeah. And so when we talk about it, I'm like an observer in life. Like I've always been like a bit of a misfit. Like I've never really fit in anywhere. And so, which has helped me become an observer and a storyteller. I have good friends, I have good family and that sort of thing. But never one of those like group guys that fit in. I was always kind of awkward.
Yeah.
But so I've been an observer and observing this, and I remember, being pushed into vaccinating my kids. And I was on the fence for that. I was like, well, the science is showing that kids under a certain age, it doesn't affect them as much. And then in 2021 or 2022, the National Institute of Health in the UK determined that children didn't need to be vaccinated,
Mm-hmm.
right? because I was worried. Like, listen, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. My kids have their shots. Like, it's not like I'm not. I don't want. I just want to qualify that I'm not that anti-vaxxer guy, but I'm also cautious, and I talk to my doctor, and I don't just sort of jump on the bandwagon. So I was bullied by members of the community for not vaccinating my kids. And years later, we discover that they didn't need to be vaccinated. It didn't affect them the same way. It didn't, it was, and I just thought, and this is what I was touching on earlier, which is, the othering, the pointing the fingers, the judgment. Like, how many, I don't know about you, but how many people did you lose as friends because you maybe had a slightly different idea or a slightly different perception? And I just, so from that, the perspective of that being a waste of time for some people, for sure, but the social experiment really hurt a lot of people, I think. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling now.
No, you good, because the pandemic. I would say this: the pandemic and the lockdowns was a gift and a curse. For some people, it was the greatest blessing they could ever have because they had, yet again, financial backing from the government. If you got unemployment, you were getting like $1,000 a week. For yeah. Like, people were making money. Like, I'm telling you, like, people were going from, like, making maybe $12 an hour to their income doubling or even tripling in a week's time,
Wow.
because they weren't essential workers, and that's how they got the bread.
Right.
But it was a curse. It was a gift to some because their finances got straight, and they were given time to, like, develop whatever creative thing they wanted or work on whatever they wanted. It was a curse because when you're in such close proximity with people, day in and day out, you can't go anywhere outside of your home, outside of these four walls. That puts a toll on anybody. You know what I mean? Brother, sister, mother, father. Parents and kids. Like, everybody needs that breather room to kind of, like, exhale and take that pressure off. You know what I mean? So it ruined relationships. It ruined a whole bunch of stuff for a whole bunch of people. And yet again, and what was the most devastating thing about it was that these big corporations were able to stay open and stay operating as a main source of, if you need something, you come to us. We're a big corporation. We're always going to be open. But yet again, the government cracked down on mom and pop shops, smaller entities, basically basically trying to eliminate that middle working class, where I had a dream, and this is just an example. A person goes, I have a dream of owning a supermarket, right? you know I'm a one-off supermarket. This is the only Ariel supermarket around, and the government's like, bro, like, you're done, shut it down, you can't do anything. Like, what am I going to do with my employees? What am I, but yet again, Walmart, Target, Amazon was able to operate freely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was such a tragedy to lose the local business,
Yeah.
man. And this is why, when you talk about social experiment, when you talk about um, there were other sort of nefarious intents going on. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's mind-boggling, and my brother gives me the names of people like George Soros, and he gives me the names of, and we I look these things up, and I'm like, you know what, we are like, what are we? Are we in a, like, there's always that joke, are we in a simulation, right? But here we are, like, there seem to be a lot of people who have woken up in the last few years, who kind of see things. They see the corruption. They see the divide and conquer. They want to live and let live. Be who you are. It doesn't really matter. Let's just have a better world.
Yeah.
And you talk to 100 people, 90 of them will say the same things, and yet here we are. Here we are, where the media is dividing us, where the governments are dividing us, with politicians, you know, business interests. Like it's so much easier to divide us because, like my brother says, we become sheep, right?
Yeah.
And it's wild. Like you mentioned earlier, and like and it's something I thought about. I've thought about is like at some point people are going to stand up and say enough.
Yeah.
And thank goodness America still has, the Second Amendment. Um, because once they start to mess with and that, from my understanding, that's to protect us from the government.
Yeah.
That's what it was there for, right?
That's
From
what
what
it's
I
there
understand,
for. But there's so many other paths that we could take before we get there. You know what I mean?
for sure.
So many, so many. So, roomies, not inciting violence. We're not promoting violence. Just to make sure.
Oh my
To be
God! Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of
just
course.
to be clear. Just to be clear
Oh
on
my
all of that.
yes.
We're
Oh
we're
my
we're, we're,
gosh.
we're, we're not talking about getting
No,
violent.
no, 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 no. Oh
But
my gosh.
but
Thanks for bringing us back. Thanks for
yeah, yeah,
bringing
yeah,
us
yeah, yeah.
back.
No, but this is the thing about it, right? When it comes down to it, it's a shame because America itself is supposed to be this great opportunity. You're supposed to be able to come here, build what you want, gain as much wealth as you want. You could be, in one place you could be nothing, and here you could be something. And the more we move forward, the more that our governments kind of like take more rights away from us, put more power in their pocket. It's less likely for us to become something that we want to become. And then on top of all of that, what the pandemic did, or at least like with social media and how the algorithms play a part in everything, people don't want to work hard for things. They believe that everything should be instant.
See that sense of entitlement.
Yeah,
That's what those incentives create, right? They create a sense of entitlement.
yeah,
You know, man, I watched my dad, die at 59 of lung cancer, uh, working on a truck, driving, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. Um, I watched his life deteriorate because he was a working man. He was a
yeah,
proud working man. Um, and I see sometimes I see young people expecting, and no disrespect to young people because we're all just trying to navigate through this world, right? But
yeah.
you see people with a sense of entitlement, and it's like, you know what? It's not the way it works. It's
No,
not the way it works. No one's going to give you a free ride. And my dad pretty much instilled that in me. Like, you want something, you better work for it because you're not gonna inherit any money when I die. So
it's like you better get to it, bro. Like I'm gonna give you the best opportunities I could provide for you, but it's looking kind of grim over here.
yeah, exactly. Oh, but that's the thing. I mean, you mentioned the entitlement, and it's hard, right? Because you know we're surrounded by such beauty, and we're surrounded by such wonderful things, and it's like sometimes we lose sight of it because of so much noise. I kind of think of it, and I touch on it in the book too. It's a lot of noise, right? And the noise is keeping us angry, and the noise is keeping us divided, and the noise is preventing us from seeing the opportunities that sometimes are put right in front of us. You know, and I try so hard to instill that in my kids, but yeah, Dad, I just want to be a UFC fighter. Yeah, Dad, I just want to be a hockey player. Well, that's great for the 1 in 2 million that
Yeah,
does that. What you gonna do otherwise?
like it's cool. Like in my perspective, it's cool to go for your dreams.
Of course, of course.
Reach your dreams, go for it. If you don't want to be a UFC fighter, train. If you want to be a hockey player, train.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, don't just try to put all your eggs in that one basket because as much muscle and as much coordination you have, you also have that thing in between your ears that you could use as well.
absolutely.
And yet again, this goes back to how opportunities right now are being lost. Like if people were to if wealth was reallocated and put into these communities where people are underpoverished, don't have great educational systems, you could find out that most children, if you give them the right settings, safe environment where they're not, you know, they don't
Hungry.
have anxiety, they're not, in a state of panic all the time, you know, they could thrive, and that could be the most beneficial thing for any country. Give,
That's
give, and you don't even need mm, 1,000 generations of that. 1 or 2 generations of educated, healthy citizens would push your society leaps and bounds.
absolutely, that's a beautiful vision, and
Yeah.
that should be the priority. That should always be the priority. The priority being the future, not the present wealth, the
Yeah.
future wealth. Because
Yeah.
you're absolutely right, and it's heartbreaking. Like I've known kids um, in my life where they just got a raw deal, you know, and there was no one there to guide them. And smart, creative, talented, but it's just like this all this promise, all this hope gets crushed for the exact reasons that you're talking about. Um, yeah, it's pretty. I think we need to get into a room, and we need to map it out, and we need to take it to governments and say, here's the plan, but 4 year cycles, 5 year cycles. There's no appetite, but the freaking should be, because I'll tell you, man, like there's so many great minds, some people with so many great ideas, and so many people who want to do good.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to do well for yourself by doing good for the world,
Yep.
right? And we're just like, wow. So, unfortunately, the book has only been described as a survival guide, not a roadmap.
But in order for you to get to the road, you have to survive.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
the more we think about it, the more we look into it. Survivor Machine is a reflection of current society and what could happen if we allow it to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I
And
agree.
and also if keep we keep on the same pace that we're at, and it's not really the fault of the majority. It's not,
No.
because what's happening now is that we're being put in a place where we're overworked, overstressed, desensitized, and we don't have a moment to breathe. Because if you compare, how things are now to 60 years ago, back to the 50s, you know, you could have a one parent household that one parent works, the other one stays at home. But yet again, you have a 3 bedroom house, two cars in the garage. You could send both of your kids to college, and you're just a maintenance man or a
Yeah.
mechanic, or the milk. Not that they have these anymore, a milkman or whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Absolutely. 100%. And that's the real question. That observation is so bang on, because yes, like when my parents were younger, when their parents were younger, absolutely. You know, a house painter or a janitor or a guy who works at the mill could buy a house and support his family.
Yeah.
What happened, man? Like, there are a lot of theories on what happened, but we may never get back to those days, but we need to get back to better days. You know,
Well, there's I have a couple of theories on how to get somewhat good to those days. But
okay.
yet again, if I were to say those things or even try to like suggest it to somebody who could actually make a move, I would probably be assassinated.
Oh my God, that's a scary thought. Like,
Yeah.
man, it's isn't that awful when ideas um, become a danger to the person who has the ideas? Isn't that
It's
isn't that weird?
but that's the life that we've been living in, or at least in the United States, right? And I'll leave you with this great example. In the last 100 years, right, we've had, I would say, roughly about 12 to about 17 scientists and inventors come out with different energy sources, right? That could bring free energy. And, the main guy, Nikola Tesla, had an idea for free energy across the globe. Can you imagine what the world would be if energy and electricity was, readily available for everyone on the planet? That you don't have to even plug in. Your device just works because it's in the air.
Yeah.
The playing field would be so leveled that the United States may not be a superpower. China may not be a superpower because of the
Right.
fact that you're giving that to everyone.
I've heard those types of ideas, and it makes so much sense. And yet, the the um, the power and the control of the corporations that are controlling the energy. Absolutely. There was a David Mamet is a playwright, and he's kind of like a lesser known playwright. I was kind of into him, still am. And he did an adaptation of the water engine. You remember? Have you ever heard the story of the water engine?
Yeah, yeah.
Where
Was the guy from the '70s who made the car run on water, and then he
yeah,
like
and
disappeared after he like advertised it and all that stuff. Yeah.
right, and this one goes back almost 80 years. So and it was shut down by so the story, and it's like I don't know if it's a documentary, but he wrote about it, and it's yeah, and that's the story exactly. He kept the idea a secret. It leaked out. The big auto industry discovered it, and they crushed it and killed him. So yeah, to your point about not sharing that kind of technology and having the technologies across the board to make energy and to make energy free is that would be game changing.
Yeah.
100%, 100%. But this is the conundrum, right? You have the idea, you want to take it to market, but it conflicts with the profit side,
Yeah.
and it gets crushed. Yeah, it's freaking yeah. Oh, dude. If
And
I
I'll say it like this: in the next, I don't know, 50 years, 100 years, we're gonna have to face that decision regardless.
yeah, yeah.
The world's eventually gonna run out of oil.
It's funny. In Canada, one of the political parties came out with some sort of a statement, or some journalist uh, said that our government has spent almost $1 trillion in the last 50 years on alternative energy, but nothing has come to the surface. So at the end of the day, we're still reliant on fossil fuels
Yeah.
because that $1 trillion, where did it go? Where are the results? Right.
And
And I'm
somebody,
sure there are results buried somewhere, right?
yep. If they came close to what Nikola Tesla was working on, that got buried automatically. If they can't put a meter on it, that got buried automatically. And people are greedy, so some of that money went to some people's pockets that shouldn't have gone to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing with Canada right now. It's really sad.
And I,
But
and this is another great example, and I'll leave you with this one, right?
okay.
In the last 2 years, 12 scientists who have been actively working on like alternate energy and anti-gravity propulsion have gone missing.
I heard that.
Yeah.
That's
and the
crazy.
thing also and the thing associated with that is that if you bring anti-gravity into the fold, right? One, you can't power that with what we have now, like jet fuel. We can't power it with that. So they're gonna have to release an alternate form of energy, which in turn could give free energy to everyone. So the more we push for something of that nature, we're coming to the realization that we have to kind of like switch the power dynamic and literally power dynamic, so that way we could progress forward. We're gonna come to that caveat pretty soon in society. I can tell you that now.
Yeah. Oh man, it'll be ugly. Ugh. Oh, anyway, can I do a little promo?
Yeah, yeah, drop it, man.
Here's It's available on Amazon, and it doesn't cover all the cool things that we've been talking about, but it covers a lot of it. But I got to say, like, it's always fun having these conversations because you know
Yeah,
what, we're we're guessing, we're speculating, we're making observations, things that we've seen. And that's the beauty of human interaction and conversation,
Yeah,
because ideas form and you know, you thoughts and it's just it's what makes I think it's one of the positives for technology
yep,
is that um, people based in different places can sit and have a conversation, and I think that that's beautiful. And Ariel, I think you're doing really cool stuff, so
I
thank you.
appreciate you. I appreciate you, Mike. So before I let you go, I always ask this last question to all my guests.
Okay.
Do you have any final thoughts, words of wisdom, or advice for the roomies?
Wow. I just don't lose sight of your passions, don't lose sight of your dreams. Because if I can write a book, man, anybody can, build an alternative energy system. So honestly, like, yeah, I mean, you know, live and let live. Because as long as we're divided, we're not going anywhere.
True on that. And roomies, remember, this conversation, we speculated a lot. We, went down a couple of rabbit holes, but yet again, don't take us too seriously on that. But the one thing you should take seriously is, keep your head up. If you have a creative thing in your mind, bring it into the real world. Because if someone like myself, who's you know comes from the hood, could do a podcast and speak to people like Mike, who is a creative, and didn't think he could write a book, y'all could do anything I want. Especially if you're a young person, don't let your circumstances dictate how your future is going to come out. And with that, peace out.